Tonight, the world grows quiet. The noise of the day fades, and the old stories begin to breathe again. Welcome to Narrative Nights, a place where ancient myths are not told in haste, but allowed to unfold slowly, like dreams remembered in the dark. Here we walk beside forgotten gods, cross mist-covered shores, and listen to the wisdom carried through time, softly, gently, without urgency. There is nothing you need to learn, nothing you need to follow. Only listen. Let your thoughts grow still, let your breathing slow, and allow the story to carry you between waking and sleep. Now. The fire burns low, the night deepens, and the story begins. In the beginning, before the sun warmed the waters, before the sky was split from the earth, there was naught but the endless drift of the primordial chaos, a time when there was no shape to time, no definition to place, and no form to the living pulse of existence. All that could be heard was the murmur of the deep, the sigh of the winds that had not yet found their way, and the soft lap of waters against a shoreless world. It was a world of endless potential, a world of stillness and silence, where the elements themselves were but whispers of what they would become. The old tales speak of it as the time of the great dark, when nothing could be seen but the trembling of the unseen forces that swirled together, held in the balance by something greater, something ancient. And in the heart of this boundless void, before there were shores or skies, before there was breath or flame, there was the Taluvna Divnu, the land of the deep, where all things were one. Here the spirits of the earth, sea and sky were not yet divided. They flowed as one, an endless and flowing unity. For there were no divisions, no separations, just the boundless, endless stretch of chaos in which all creation would one day rise. The Taluvna Divnu was not a place of sight, nor of form. It was a space of deep sensation, a thrum of things beneath, an energy both dense and light. It was a time before the sun spoke its first words into the sky, before the moon turned its face to the earth in silvery shyness. The oceans, though vast, were nothing more than murmurs upon the currents of formlessness, the winds themselves silent and unspoken, their paths unknown. The sky, though wide and endless, was empty, silent as a vast unreachable void. Everything drifted, and nothing stood still, except the heart of the chaos, which pulsed quietly and unwavering, a place that would one day give birth to all that would be. The spirits of this time, the first beings to tread the currents of this unmade world, were like the waters themselves, amorphous, formless, and ancient beyond measure. They knew neither birth nor death, neither past nor future. They were the whispers of the earth before it ever rose from the sea, the flickers of thought before the fire had come to spark life. It was from these primordial beings that the first songs were born, songs of longing and silence, songs of deep and unknowable yearning. The old bards say that the first stirrings of the world's shaping came when the great Fomaru, the primordial ones, awoke from the endless drift. They were born not from the earth, nor from the sea, nor from the sky, but from the very heartbeat of the great chaos itself. They were not bound by form, nor by shape, but existed in the flowing mists between what would one day become the worlds of land, sea, and sky. And so, the first migrations began. The first stirrings of life, like a ripple in a still pool, were sent forth by the restless Fomaru. They began to move across the endless waters, moving in patterns unseen, searching for the place where the chaos could be shaped, where the waters could rest, and where the winds might find their voice. From the heart of the deep they gathered, their movements quiet but deliberate as they whispered into the void, drawing forth the first patterns of land from the sea's embrace. At first, there was nothing but the vast, timeless expanse of the waters, endless and silent. Yet, as the Fomaru moved across the surface, their very passage began to shape the waters, creating ripples that would become the first land masses. The tides of chaos bent beneath their will, and the first islands of the earth emerged from the dark, hidden depths of the great primordial sea. These first islands were not yet earth in the way we know it. The ground was soft and trembling, not yet solid, but more like a promise, like the very skin of a world still unborn. And here, in this realm of transition, the first sacred spaces were created, a place where the chaotic energies of the universe could gather and begin their first formation. The air was thick with the energy of creation, a whispering hum that carried the first seeds of the land. Trees did not yet grow here, but the spirit of trees lay beneath the surface, ready to rise in time. There were no animals, no beasts or birds, yet their spirits rested in waiting for the moment when the world would be ready to receive them. And then the skies began to stir. From the silent heavens the first winds began to rise, born not of any breath but of the stirring energies that pulsed through the Taluv na Divnu. The winds spoke their first words, a soft murmur that carried the scent of salt and earth, and something far deeper, an ancient knowledge, a wisdom older than time itself. As the winds began to gather, they stretched across the world of water and land, caressing the tender shapes of the first islands. They whispered promises to the restless Formaru, offering them the breath of the skies, the whisper of life itself. In time, the first trees grew, their roots twisting deep into the trembling earth, reaching out toward the sky, as if drawing the first threads of energy from the great expanse above. Slowly the land took form, shaped by the formless beings who had come from the heart of the chaos. The first sacred spaces grew in the groves, around the rising stones, and in the hollowed mists of the deep, where the first druidic rituals were said to have taken place. No one truly knows what they were like, but the old ones say they were not like any sacred space we know today. They were places of connection, places where the very fabric of the world could be felt, where the winds could speak directly to the heart, and where the land's pulse could be heard beneath the skin. The first sacred stones rose like silent watchers, their shapes rough and wild, like the bones of the earth itself rising to greet the sky. These stones, placed by the hands of the Fomaru, became the first boundary markers, not of a world separated by time and space, but of a world where land, sea and sky were still one, where the sacred energies of the earth could flow freely, uninterrupted. The stones stood like sentinels, keeping watch over the waters and the skies, their faces smooth and ancient, their forms unchanging in the flow of time. And so, it was that the world began its slow, graceful birth. The land grew, the seas shifted, and the skies whispered their songs to the earth below. The first migrations had passed through the Tal of Nadivna, bringing with them the first shapes of the world, and from that moment onward, the land, sea and sky would never again be the same. For in the beginning there was only chaos, and in the heart of that chaos there lay the potential for all things, the land, the sea and the sky. And from that sacred union, from that first shaping of space, the world would one day arise in all its beauty and terror, in all its mystery and wonder. But even now, as the stars gaze down upon the sleeping world, the whispers of the Fomaru still linger. In the gentle winds that dance through the oak groves, in the mist that rises from the sea, in the sacred silence of the stones, the first stirrings of creation are never truly gone. They are there, just beyond the veil, waiting to be remembered once more. In the time when the first ripples of land had settled gently from the dark waters, when the soft winds began to stir and kiss the tender roots of the newly risen earth, the heavens too felt the stirring of ancient forces. From the silent skies above, where only the whispers of the winds had once travelled, came the first divine arrivals. They descended not with thunder or fury, but in a manner that was silent and eternal, like the soft brushing of the moon's light across the sleeping world. Their descent was as gentle as the breath of the earth itself, unnoticed by the trembling islands below, but felt in the very fabric of existence. It is said that they came as the stars wept down from the sky, their light spilling into the dark ancient waters, drawing patterns that only the earth could understand. And as they touched the land for the first time, they brought with them the seed of the sacred order, a divine imprint that would form the foundation of all things yet to be. These divine beings, not born from the waters or the stones, but from the heavens themselves, were the first true touch of power upon the earth. The very essence of their being was woven from the starry night, from the eternal energies that spun the cosmos into existence. From their arrival, the land began to stir in ways it never had before. The soft mists that had clung to the earth's surface began to thicken, swirling as if responding to the presence of something otherworldly. The winds, once timid and uncertain, grew bolder, blowing through the hills and valleys with newfound purpose. The earth, which had previously rested in its slow, undisturbed silence, began to hum like a deep song beginning in the depths of the sea. These first divine beings, the Aish, were not gods as we would come to know them, but something more primal, more elemental. They were the breath of the earth before it had formed its bones, the whisper of the sky before it had drawn the first lines of the winds. The Aish were the embodiment of sacred forces, each tied to an element, a direction, a power that would eventually shape the sacred order of the land. Their forms, though divine, were not without flaw or uncertainty, for they were born from the rawness of creation itself, their very beings shaped by the chaos that preceded them. It is told that the first of these divine beings appeared at the foot of the highest mountains, where the earth touched the sky, where the great winds of the heavens had once swept through the formless expanse. They came not in grand procession, but as whispers of the world's ancient memories, as sparks of light in the empty skies. One by one, they settled upon the trembling earth, their forms flickering like the stars above. The first of them, Iryu, the goddess of the earth, walked gently upon the shores of the first islands. Her feet touched the soil, and with her steps the first roots of trees sprang forth, the first grasses swayed in the breeze, and the first flowers bloomed shyly beneath the stars. It is said that Iryu did not create the land, but awakened it, drawing forth from the earth's deep heart the first stirrings of life. And in her wake, the land began to stretch out like a child awakening from a long slumber, reaching for the light that now touched its skin. Beside her came Lu, the god of the sky, his form rising like the sun's first rays. His eyes were the bright blue of the heavens, and his hands held the winds that had once wandered aimlessly across the seas. With a single touch of his hand, the winds were given direction. The sky, once silent and still, became a tapestry of shifting clouds, winds that carried the promise of change, of movement. Lu's arrival heralded the first breezes that blew across the land, winds that would carry the seeds of the earth from one place to another, stirring the roots of life. Where Lu went, the earth responded. The rivers began to wind their paths, cutting through the soft soil, their waters carrying the first whispers of the divine. The first trees which had risen at Iryu's touch, began to stretch their limbs toward the heavens, reaching upward as if to touch the hand of Lu himself. The sky, now filled with light and air, began to hum with the energy of the land. The divine had come to touch the earth, and the earth, in turn, began to wake. Yet the third divine being, Mananaun Maclear, was different from the others. He came not from the earth, nor from the sky, but from the sea, rising from the waters that had once been the home of all things. His form was as fluid as the waves, his presence as deep and endless as the ocean itself. Mananaun Maclear brought with him the knowledge of the tides, the ebb and flow of life, the eternal dance between land and sea. He wandered the shores where the land met the waters, drawing from the ocean's depths the knowledge of all that was hidden beneath the surface. It is said that Manannán mac Lír's voice was like the sound of the waves breaking upon the shore, carrying with it the weight of all things forgotten. With each word the sea responded, its waves rising and falling in gentle harmony. The creatures of the deep, once dormant, stirred in the vast expanse of the oceans. From the sea's depths rose the first creatures of the water, fish, seals, and whales, each one carrying with it the whispers of the ancient world. Together these three beings, Iru, Lu, and Manannán mac Lir, formed the first divine settlement upon the earth, a settlement born not of creation, but of awakening. They did not carve the world from nothing, but brought to life that which was already waiting beneath the surface, beneath the winds, beneath the waters. They set in motion the first rhythms of the world, the tides of the oceans, the winds of the skies, and the growth of the earth. In their presence the land began to change, to awaken from its deep slumber, stretching toward the heavens above and the seas below. As the divine beings settled upon the earth, they did not claim dominion over the land, but instead they walked with the land, moving through it as one would walk through a grove of ancient oaks. They did not rule over the earth, but instead became part of its breath, part of its very rhythm. They were the first teachers of the land, showing it the way of balance, of harmony, of the slow and steady unfolding of life. In time, the land grew more firm beneath the feet, the seas became more ordered, and the sky more structured. The three sacred powers, earth, sky, and sea, began to find their places, their boundaries, their sacred space. The Aishi did not carve the world into separate realms, but instead they awakened the realms that already existed within the land. They drew forth the energies that had always been there, hidden beneath the surface of the waters, beneath the winds, beneath the soil, and so the world slowly took its shape. The land, which had once been soft and trembling, became firm beneath the weight of the divine presence. The sea, which had once been formless, became filled with creatures and life. The sky, which had once been silent, became alive with winds that sang their songs across the world. These first divine beings did not merely shape the earth. They gave it a rhythm, a pulse, a sacred order that would carry through the ages. The land, once soft and uncertain, was now touched by the divine, and with that touch came the first sacred spaces, the stones, the trees, the rivers, the mountains. They all began to take on their sacredness, their roles in the unfolding story of the world. The land had awakened, and with it, the first seeds of sacred order had been planted. The divine beings, Iru, Lu, and Manannán mac Lir, had touched the earth, and the earth would never again be the same. The world was no longer formless, no longer chaotic. It had found its shape, its rhythm, its place in the great unfolding story of the cosmos. And as the divine beings walked upon the earth, their steps became the first footprints of sacred order. Their presence lingered in the wind that brushed through the trees, in the whisper of the sea that met the shore, and in the hum of the earth beneath the feet of those who would come after them. The first divine arrivals had come to touch the earth, and the earth had listened. In the time when the first divine beings had stirred the land, awakened the seas, and breathed life into the skies, the earth began to take shape, but still something was lacking. The world had stirred, yes, and the first divine presence had drawn from the deep well of potential, but there was a subtle disquiet in the air, for the earth, though alive, had not yet found its true form, its true rhythm. The great breath of the cosmos had only just begun to flow, but there were no boundaries to define the spaces, no separation between the forces that moved the world. There was no beginning, no end, only the flowing union of earth, sea, and sky. And so the divine knew that it was time to weave the threads of order into the great chaos. It is in this quiet moment, when the world was still half formed, that the first division came. The gods, who had walked with the earth and breathed its winds, gathered beneath the great moonlit sky, and there they whispered together. They spoke of the ancient balance that must come to pass. For the land had begun to stir, the seas had begun to swell, and the skies had begun to breathe. But each needed its place, each needed its space, and so the gods took their first steps to separate the realms of the earth, to create the sacred boundaries that would give the world its form and its meaning. At the heart of the land, beneath the great oak trees and beneath the silent stones, the god Iryu stood. She was the mother of the earth, the one who had breathed life into the soil, who had awakened the trees and the grasses. Her touch had shaped the land, and now it was time for her to give the land its boundary, to give it its place in the great cosmic dance. And so, with a breath that carried the scent of earth and rain, she whispered into the heart of the land. From her words the earth rose. Mountains, once low and soft, grew tall, their peaks reaching toward the heavens. Valleys formed between the peaks, deep and shadowed, where the rivers would one day flow. And beneath the earth, the roots of the trees spread deep, anchoring the land into the great bones of the cosmos. The earth became a place of grounding, a place of rootedness, of shelter for the creatures that would come to walk its surface. Iryu had shaped the land, but now she separated it, drawing a boundary where the soil met the sky, where the mountains met the sea, and so the realm of the earth was born. But with it came a quiet understanding. The land would be the domain of the mortal, the place where life would be born, grow, and return to the earth. The divine would walk its surface, yes, but the land would be the domain of those who had form, those who had breath. The first great boundary between mortal and divine had been drawn. Beside Iryu stood Lu, the god of the sky. His hands, which had once shaped the winds and brought the breath of the heavens, now stretched wide, and he looked upon the world with eyes that could see beyond the horizon. He was the keeper of the winds, the one who had stirred the heavens and woven the clouds into the sky. But now it was time for him to separate the sky from the earth, to give the winds their place, and the clouds their form. With a deep breath, Lu raised his hand to the heavens. He separated the winds from the land, drawing the great boundary between the heavens and the earth. As his fingers touched the air, the sky expanded, stretching wide and vast above the earth, its pale blue canvas stretching to the ends of the world. The winds that had once been wild and untamed now had their place, swirling and rising in great waves of air. The sky, once silent and still, became alive with movement and change, its colours shifting with the dawn and the dusk. The sky became a realm of freedom, of the divine breath that carried the world's songs, that carried the seeds of life across the land. It was the domain of those who would come to dwell in the air, the spirits who would soar and the birds who would fly. The heavens would not be a place for the mortal, but a place for the divine, and for those whose breath could touch the sky and who could move between the winds. Yet it would also be the domain of the changing, the uncertain, a realm where the forces of the universe could move and shift, where the divine could walk unseen among the clouds. But with the division of the land and the sky, something remained. The sea, which had once been fluid and unshaped, now lay in the balance between the two realms. It was the great expanse that stretched between the earth and the sky, the great unknown that no god could fully claim. And so it was that the god Manannán mac Lir, keeper of the seas, stepped forward. He, who had once walked between the waters and the land, knew the true nature of the sea. It was neither earth nor sky, neither mortal nor divine, but something in between, something that could never truly be contained. Manannán mac Lir raised his hands to the waters, his form shifting like the waves themselves. He called to the ocean with a voice that rumbled like thunder, and the great sea stirred beneath him. The waves rose, crashing against the shore with the force of the heavens themselves. The waters began to form their own boundary, separating the land from the sky, but not in the way the earth had been separated from the heavens. The sea did not create a solid line, a firm boundary, but instead it became a place of fluidity, of change. The waves would crash, and the tides would ebb, creating a constant movement between the land and the sky, between the mortal and the divine. And so the sea became a realm of mystery, of hidden knowledge, of the unknown. It was the domain of those who could move between the worlds, who could walk upon the earth and yet still be touched by the vast eternal waters. The sea was not bound by the same rules as the earth or the sky. It was a realm that contained both the mortal and the divine, where the forces of nature could mix and flow, where the gods could walk with the creatures of the deep, and where the tides themselves held the secrets of the universe. With the creation of these three sacred realms, the land, the sea, and the sky, the world had found its balance. The divine had separated the forces that moved the earth, giving each its place and its domain. The land became the realm of the mortal, a place of rootedness, of growth and decay. The sky became the realm of the divine, a place of freedom, of change, and of movement. The sea became a realm of mystery, of hidden forces that could not be fully understood. But even as the boundaries were drawn, the divine knew that they were not separate, that the land, the sea, and the sky were but parts of a greater whole. The balance had been struck, but it was not a final, unchanging balance. It was a dance, a flow between the realms, where the forces of the earth, sky, and sea would continue to shape the world, continuing to create and recreate, to breathe life into the cosmos. And so, the world began to take its shape as the divine and mortal realms found their places. The boundaries had been drawn, but the dance between the divine and mortal was just beginning. The balance between the realms would be tested, would shift, but for now the world rested in the quiet harmony of its new order, a world where the land, the sea, and the sky were each sacred, each divine, and each eternal. In the time that followed the division of the realms, when the sky stretched high above, the sea rolled deep below, and the earth lay cradled between them, there arose a new wonder, an awakening that came not with the rush of wind or the crash of waves, but with the gentle pulse of the land itself. The earth, now a living thing, hummed with a quiet energy, its heart beating in rhythms older than time, its spirit drawn from the very breath of the divine. It was here, in this sacred space where the land and the divine were intertwined, that the first steps of humankind were taken, when the first mortals learned to walk upon holy ground. The land, in those ancient days, was not the barren and static thing that we know today. It was a living tapestry, woven with threads of magic and memory, near with forces far older than the gods who had first divided the worlds. The mountains, with their peaks reaching toward the heavens, were ancient beings themselves, their stones laid down by the hands of the divine. The rivers, winding their way through the valleys, carried with them the whispers of the first waters, the very essence of the earth's soul. The hills, the groves, and the valleys were not mere landscapes, but sentient spaces, places where the breath of the earth could be felt as clearly as the winds that blew through the sky. These were the sacred places, the holy ground where the divine and the mortal would meet, where the living earth could be touched, and where the first humans would walk in reverence. It was in the deep, shaded groves where the first mortals found themselves drawn, their feet pressing into the soft, moss-covered earth. The groves were not simply places of trees, but of spirits, of living memory. The trees themselves were ancient beings, guardians of wisdom and knowledge, and their roots reached deep into the heart of the land. The first sacred groves were places where the divine touch of Iryu could be felt most strongly, where the earth itself whispered its secrets to those who would listen. Here, in the dappled light beneath the canopies of oak and ash, the first druids would come to learn the ways of the earth, to hear the murmurs of the land and to understand the sacred balance between the worlds. The trees, with their roots burrowing deep into the soil, held the stories of the world. The wind would pass through the leaves and carry those stories far and wide, from one grove to another, across the hills and into the valleys. The first druids, in their quiet reverence, would sit beneath the great trees, listening to the wisdom that was carried on the breeze. It is said that in those early days the trees could speak to the mortals, sharing their knowledge of the earth's cycles, of the changing of the seasons, and of the forces that move beneath the surface of the world. And so, the first sacred groves were born. Places where the land itself was a living, breathing entity, its pulse felt in the sway of the trees, the rustling of the leaves, the flow of the waters. These groves became the centre of spiritual life for the first mortals, for it was here that they first learned to walk upon holy ground, to commune with the spirits of the land and to understand the sacredness of the earth beneath their feet. The Druids, those first keepers of the sacred knowledge, Saskiki Sostas, would walk the sacred groves with reverence, for they knew that the land was not just a place to be used, but a living being to be honoured, a sacred presence to be revered. Beyond the groves, the hills and valleys of the earth began to take on their own sacredness. The ancient hills, rolling softly against the horizon, were the bones of the earth, formed by the slow passage of time, shaped by the hand of the divine. The rivers winding through the valleys were the lifeblood of the land, carrying the essence of the earth to every corner of the world. The valleys themselves, deep and shadowed, were the sacred wombs of the earth, where life was born, where the land's heart beat with the rhythm of the cosmos. The rivers, like the veins of the earth, carried the life of the land to every corner. They were the first roads, the first paths upon which the first mortals would travel. The waters of the rivers held the memory of all things, from the first stirrings of creation to the first steps of humankind. As the rivers wound their way through the valleys, they carved their paths into the earth, leaving behind fertile soil where life could take root. The river banks were the first places of settlement, where the first communities would gather, where the first mortals would build their homes. And in these valleys the stones began to speak. The ancient stones, which had been placed by the hands of the gods, were not simply markers of the land's boundaries, but living witnesses to the passage of time. The stone circles, which began to rise in the sacred valleys, were places where the divine could be touched and understood. These stones were not merely arranged in simple patterns, but were laid with purpose, each stone placed with care and reverence, each one carrying the imprint of the divine. The stone circles were sacred places, where the forces of the land, the sky and the sea came together in balance. It is said that these stones held the memories of the cosmos, the whispers of the earth's creation, and the first songs of the gods. The Druids, in their reverence, would gather at the stone circles to listen to the earth's heartbeat, to hear the stories that were carried on the winds, and to commune with the spirits of the land. The stone circles became the places where the divine touched the earth, where the boundary between the mortal and the divine grew thin, where the sacred space of the land could be felt most strongly. It is through these sacred landscapes, these groves, hills, valleys and stone circles, that the first humans came to understand the sacredness of the land. They learned that the earth was not just a place to dwell, but a living, breathing entity, a space where the divine and the mortal could meet. The first steps of humankind were not taken upon a barren world, but upon a holy ground, a land imbued with the essence of the divine. The earth, once formless and unshaped, had now become a living canvas upon which the story of the world was written. The rivers, the stones, the groves, the hills, they were all part of the living earth, each one a sacred symbol of the divine forces that moved through the world. And it was through these sacred places that the first humans learned to walk with reverence, to listen to the land's whispers, and to honour the sacredness of the earth beneath their feet. They learned that the land was not something to be conquered or used, but something to be cherished, to be revered, and to be understood. And as they walked upon the sacred ground, they became part of the story of the earth, part of the great dance of the divine. In this way, the first humans came to understand the deep connection between themselves and the earth. They learned that they were not separate from the land, but woven into its very fabric. The groves, the hills, the valleys, the rivers, they were all part of them, and they were part of the land. And so, as the first mortals walked upon holy ground, they learned the ancient rhythms of the earth, the eternal dance of life and death, growth and decay, and the sacredness that lay in every stone, every tree, every river, and every breath of wind. In the days when the land first felt the breath of the divine, when the groves whispered their ancient wisdom and the rivers carried the stories of the earth, there came a time when the world needed a keeper, one to walk the earth as both divine and mortal, to carry the weight of the land upon their shoulders. This keeper would not be chosen by blood alone, nor by strength of arm, but by the divine authority that flowed between the realms, by the deep bond that tied the sacred kingship to the earth itself. It is said that this was the time when Dagda, the good god, first bestowed upon the world the sacred symbols of rulership, the staff and the cauldron, the emblems of divine power and the earthly harvest. Dagdu, a being of vast and immeasurable power, was neither fully of the land nor of the sky, but existed in the space between. Here he was the great protector, the one who held the knowledge of the land, the sky, and the sea in his very bones. With him, he carried two sacred relics that would come to define the nature of kingship for all who would rule in the sacred realm of earth. The first of these was his staff, a great and ancient thing, carved from the living wood of the world tree itself. This staff, Uath Nu, was no mere weapon. It was the staff of life and death, of healing and destruction. In its presence all things were possible, for it could bend the very fabric of the world to the will of the ruler who held it. With this staff the king could call forth the power of the earth, could draw forth the harvest from the soil and raise the crops with a mere word. The staff was not an instrument of tyranny, but of balance. Its power was a gift that could only be wielded by those whose hearts were aligned with the sacred order of the land. Dagda's staff was said to hold the key to the kingdom's prosperity, for it was through the staff that the king could commune with the land, ensuring that the harvests would be plentiful and the seasons would turn as they were meant to. And with each new king, the staff passed from hand to hand, from one ruler to the next, a symbol of the divine authority bestowed upon them. It was not simply a symbol of power, but a reminder of the sacred bond between the ruler and the land, a bond that could not be broken. But it was not only through the staff that kings came to hold their sacred authority. Alongside it, there was another relic, one of equal power and equal mystery. This was Dagda's cauldron, the vessel from which the sustenance of life flowed. The cauldron was a symbol of abundance, of nourishment, of the land's gift to the people. It was said that when the cauldron was filled, it would never run dry. Its waters would flow endlessly, sustaining the people, feeding them in times of famine, and providing them with the means to grow and prosper. The cauldron was a reflection of the land itself, for just as the cauldron could provide endless nourishment, so too could the land, when tended by the sacred ruler, yield an endless harvest. With the cauldron, the king became the steward of the land's fertility, the one who ensured that the people would never go hungry, that the crops would grow strong and bountiful, and that the rivers would flow with plenty. The cauldron's magic was not one of conquest or power over others, but of harmony, an invitation to nurture, to sustain, and to create abundance for all. It is said that Dagda's cauldron was not just a tool of earthly nourishment, but a symbol of the deep connection between the land and its ruler. The cauldron, like the staff, was a reminder that kingship was not about domination, but about guardianship. The king was not meant to rule over the land, but to protect it, to serve it, and to ensure its fertility and abundance for all who lived upon it. And so it was that the first sacred kingship was established, not by the hand of man alone, but by the divine will of the gods through the passing of these relics. The king who wielded the staff and held the cauldron was not a mere mortal, but a conduit for the divine. The king's authority came not from strength of arm or cleverness of mind, but from the sacred bond between the ruler and the earth. Through the staff and cauldron, the king could call upon the divine powers of the land, could commune with the forces that shape the world, and could bring forth the harvests that would sustain the people. But with this great power came great responsibility. The sacred kingship was not a crown to be worn lightly, nor a title to be flaunted. The king who held the staff and cauldron was bound by sacred laws, laws that had been handed down from the gods themselves. These laws were not written in scrolls or tablets, but were etched into the very fabric of the land, into the rhythms of the seasons, into the pulse of the earth beneath the king's feet. The first law of kingship was the law of balance, balance between the ruler and the ruled, between the land and its people, between life and death. The king was the steward of the land, the guardian of its fertility, the keeper of its harvests. But this was not a one-sided relationship. The people too had a role to play in maintaining the balance. They were the caretakers of the land's bounty, the harvesters of its fruits, and the protectors of its sacred spaces. It was through the cooperation of all, through the sharing of the land's blessings, that the kingdom would thrive. The second law of kingship was the law of stewardship. The king was not a conqueror, but a protector. The king's role was to care for the land, to ensure that the earth's bounty was shared with all, and to defend the land from those who would harm it. The king was meant to walk in harmony with the land, not in opposition to it. The king's power was derived not from the oppression of the people, but from the harmony between the ruler and the land. The third law of kingship was the law of sacrifice. A king, like the land itself, was bound to cycles of life and death. The king's strength and authority came not from the taking of life, but from the giving of life, through sacrifice, through the sharing of resources, and through the protection of the land and its people. The king was meant to serve, to give of himself for the good of the kingdom, just as the land gave of itself to the people. This sacred bond of sacrifice ensured that the kingdom would prosper, for as long as the king remained true to the land and its people, the harvest would remain bountiful, and the people would remain strong. And so, through Dagdu's staff and cauldron, the first sacred kingship was established, a kingship bound by laws as old as the earth itself. The king who held the staff and cauldron did not rule alone, but ruled in service to the land and its people, guided by the sacred laws that had been woven into the very fabric of the cosmos. This sacred kingship was a bond, a sacred contract between the divine and the mortal, between the earth and its stewards. It was through this bond that the land flourished, that the harvest grew bountiful, and that the people lived in peace and prosperity. In the time that followed, many kings would rise and fall, but the sacred laws of kingship would endure. The staff and cauldron would pass from hand to hand, from ruler to ruler, and with them would come the divine authority that would shape the destiny of the land. The bond between king and earth, forged in the ancient days, would continue to guide the rulers of the world, ensuring that the land would remain fertile and abundant as long as the sacred laws were upheld. In the heart of the sacred land, where the earth met the sky in a gentle embrace, there arose another divine being, whose presence was as soft as the first rays of dawn, as nurturing as the warmth of a fire in the dark of winter. This was Brigid, the goddess of fire, of healing and of poetry, whose touch would gently soften the harshness of the early world, bringing warmth and light to a land still raw from its creation. It is told that Brigid was born of the earth itself, the daughter of Dagdu and Mor-Ri-Agarn, the great queen, who ruled over the ancient and unseen forces of the land. Her spirit, woven from the threads of fire and water, carried within it the essence of both the fiery forge and the healing well. And though her nature was as warm as the summer sun and as gentle as the morning dew, her power was great, and her influence spread far across the world, from the deep springs of the earth to the farthest reaches of the heavens. Brigid's first gift to the world was her sacred flame, a fire that burned with an eternal warmth, its light soft but steadfast, casting its glow upon the land. This flame was no ordinary fire, it was the flame of life itself, the flame that nurtured the earth, that kindled the hearts of mortals, and that guided the spirits of the divine. It was said that wherever the flame of Brigid burned, the land would flourish, the crops would grow tall, and the people would find peace and strength. Her flame was not the fierce and consuming fire of destruction, but a fire of creation, a fire that softened the rough edges of the world and brought warmth to the coldest corners. The flame of Brigid was the light of hope, the fire that burned in the hearth of the home, the warmth that filled the hearts of the people when winter's chill threatened to turn the world to ice. It was through this sacred flame that the balance between light and dark was maintained, for it was the constant reminder that no matter how harsh the world may seem, there would always be warmth, always be light, as long as her flame burned. In the sacred groves, where the earth breathed and the trees whispered their ancient songs, Brigid placed her flame in the heart of a great temple. This was no ordinary fire, for it was kept burning at all times, its light undying and eternal, a symbol of the goddess's power to heal, to create, and to guide. The people would come from far and wide, bringing offerings of herbs, of food, of their hopes and dreams, and in return, they would receive the blessings of her flame. The fire was not just a source of warmth, but of transformation, a flame that could purify the soul, ignite the spirit, and fill the heart with the strength to endure the trials of life. But Brigid's gifts did not end with the sacred flame, for it was said that she carried within her the knowledge of the wells and springs that lay hidden deep beneath the earth. These wells, which had been placed there by the gods themselves, held within them the waters of healing, waters that could soothe the wounds of both body and spirit, waters that could bring forth life from the barren earth. It was through Brigid's wisdom that the people learned to find these hidden springs, to draw from them the life-giving waters, and to use the knowledge of healing for the benefit of all. In times of sickness, in times of injury, the people would turn to Brigid, and she would show them the way to the healing wells. They would journey to the sacred springs where the waters sparkled in the sunlight and bathe in their cool, life-giving embrace. The waters of Brigid's wells were said to carry the blessings of the goddess herself, imbuing the body with strength, washing away illness, and restoring the balance between the body and the earth. It was through these waters that the power of healing was passed down to the mortals, for Brigid taught them to honour the land and the waters, to listen to the whispers of the earth and the songs of the wind, and to know the remedies that nature herself provided. It was in these moments of connection with the earth's healing forces that the people learned the art of medicine, the ancient craft of caring for the body and the soul. Brigid became not just a goddess of healing, but a teacher, teaching the mortals how to use herbs, how to tend to wounds, how to understand the rhythms of the body and the cycles of nature. She showed them the plants that grew in the meadows and along the riverbanks, the roots that could heal and the leaves that could soothe, the flowers that could calm the spirit and the berries that could nourish the body. Under her guidance, the people learned the sacred arts of medicine, which would be passed down through generations, ensuring that the knowledge of healing would never be lost. Yet it was not just the body that Brigid healed. She also tended to the soul, soothing the hearts of the people with the magic of her poetry. For Brigid was also the goddess of the spoken word, the goddess of song and story. Her words were said to be as powerful as her flame, her poetry as healing as the waters of her wells. The songs of Brigid were not merely words, but vibrations that resonated through the earth, stirring the heart and lifting the spirit. She taught the people the art of poetry, the craft of weaving words into spells that could heal, comfort, and inspire. In times of sorrow, when the people felt lost or broken, they would gather by the sacred flame and listen to the songs of Brigid. Her poetry filled the air like the fragrance of flowers, like the sound of a river flowing gently over stones, carrying with it the promise of renewal and rebirth. Through her words, the people learned to express their grief, to find solace in the stories of the past, and to connect with the divine. And Brigid taught them that poetry was not just an art, but a means of connecting with the earth and the heavens, a way of weaving together the divine and the mortal into one harmonious whole. Through Brigid's flame, her wells, and her poetry, the harshness of the early world began to soften. The people, once fearful of the cold winters and the harsh winds, learned to find warmth in the sacred flame, to find nourishment in the earth's waters, and to find healing in the songs that filled the air, The world, which had once been raw and untamed, began to take on the shape of something more beautiful, more harmonious, more balanced. The earth, once harsh and unyielding, was now a place where the divine and the mortal could meet, where healing could take place, and where the light of Brigid's flame would never falter. As the people grew in wisdom and strength, they came to understand that the power of Brigid's gifts was not in the flame itself, nor in the waters of the springs, nor even in the poetry that flowed from her lips. The true power of Brigid was in the connection she fostered between the land and the people, between the sacred and the mortal, between the heart and the earth. Her gifts were the tools through which the people could learn to live in harmony with the world around them, to honour the earth and the divine, and to walk the path of healing and peace. And so, as Brigid's flame burned brightly in the hearts of the people, the world slowly transformed. The harshness of the early days faded into memory, and in its place rose a world of balance, of growth, and of gentle power. The flame of Brigid still burns, hidden within the hearts of the earth and the hearts of those who walk upon it, guiding them through the dark, whispering softly in their ears, and reminding them of the healing power that flows through all things. Beyond the reach of the land, beyond the touch of the sky, there lies a vast and endless expanse, a realm where time and space themselves begin to bend, where the pulse of the earth grows faint and the whisper of the winds softens into an eternal sigh. This is the sea world, the great ocean that separates the realms, the place where the waters of the earth meet the vast unknown. It is a realm not of land nor of sky, but of mystery, of the spirit, of the unseen. Here, the forces that move between life and death, between the mortal and the divine, flow with the tides, and the sea itself becomes a gateway to the other world. The ancient tales speak of the sea as a place of transition, a vast and enchanted tide that moves between the realms, carrying with it the souls of those who have passed and those who journey between the worlds. It is said that the sea is a place where the living can walk, but only as shadow, and where the dead can wander, but only in silence. The waters are the passage between the realms, a threshold that must be crossed if one is to travel to the lands beyond the veil. The Fomaru, the ancient beings who once roamed the shores and depths of the world, knew the sea as no others did. It was said that they could command the tides, could part the waters with a glance, and could see into the depths of the sea as though it were the very soul of the earth. These beings, born of the sea and the mist, understood the magic of the water, the flow of the ocean's power, and the eternal dance of life and death that unfolded upon its surface. They could travel the mists, crossing from one realm to another, and carrying with them the spirits of the departed and the lost. To cross the waters of the sea, they say, is to step into the land of the spirits, where the boundaries between life and death grow thin, where the winds are always quiet, and where the moon shines brighter than in any earthly sky. The sea is not merely a body of water, but a living entity, a spirit in its own right, whose depths hold the mysteries of the cosmos, whose waves carry the breath of the divine. The mist that rises from the ocean is a veil that shrouds the world, a curtain that keeps the secrets of the other world hidden from mortal eyes. It is in this mist that the souls of the departed find their way, drifting like shadows across the waters, travelling silently beneath the moon's pale gaze. It is said that the souls of the dead are carried by the tides, floating upon the waves as though they were never truly gone, only waiting for the moment when they will cross the threshold of the sea and enter the realms beyond. The mist is their guide, the sea their road, and the tide their constant companion. Through the sea, they pass into the other world, to dwell among the gods, the spirits, and the creatures that dwell beyond the veil. The sea, with its endless horizons and deep, dark depths, is not a place to be feared, but a place to be revered. It is the place where life and death meet, where the living and the dead walk together, where the boundaries between realms dissolve like foam upon the waves. It is through the sea that the veil between worlds becomes thin, through the water that the journey to the otherworld is made. The mist that rises from the ocean is the breath of the gods, the touch of the divine, the opening of the gate between worlds. In the ancient times, it was said that those who sought to enter the otherworld would make their way to the edge of the sea, where the waters met the shore and the mist rose from the depths. There they would wait, in silence and reverence, until the tide began to stir. The mist would grow thick, the air would grow heavy, and the waves would carry with them the promise of passage. With no words, no ceremony, only the steady pull of the tides, the traveller would step into the water, feeling the cool embrace of the sea against their skin, and would be carried beyond the bounds of the mortal realm. The sea was both a physical and spiritual boundary. Those who travelled its waters were not simply crossing a body of water, but crossing a threshold, or passing into the lands of the spirit. The tides themselves were seen as the ebb and flow of the soul, a reminder that all things, life, death, and all the realms in between, move in cycles, in rhythms that are eternal and unbroken. The sea, in its deep hidden wisdom, holds the knowledge of all things, the memory of the earth, the whispers of the stars. The waves, with their constant motion, remind us that life and death are not opposites, but part of a single, unbroken cycle. The mist that clings to the waters is said to be a veil between worlds, a fog that carries with it the breath of the departed. It is in this mist that the souls of the dead travel, crossing from the mortal world to the realm of the gods, passing through the waters like ships upon the tide. The mist is both a guide and a protection. For those who journey through it are not alone. They are carried by the sea, guided by the wisdom of the waters, and watched over by the spirits who dwell beneath the waves. The sea is a realm where the boundaries between the living and the dead grow thin, where the tides of the soul ebb and flow, where the journey to the otherworld is made. It is said that to cross the sea is to enter a place beyond time, where the past, the present, and the future are woven together in a single thread. The ocean surface reflects not just the stars above, but the stars of the soul, the divine memory of all things. It is in the deep of the sea that the souls of the departed find their way, guided by the currents, carried by the mist, and protected by the spirits of the waters. The crossing of the sea is not a journey taken lightly, for it is a journey into the unknown, a passage through the gateway between worlds. It is a journey where the traveller must surrender all that they know and step into the void, into the mist, into the depths. There, they will encounter the spirits of the ocean, the beings who dwell beneath the waters, the ancient powers that watch over the threshold between realms. The sea, in its endless mystery, is a place of transition, a place where the cycles of life and death are woven together in a single eternal flow. To cross its waters is to become part of the great dance of the universe, to step into the flow of the cosmos, where the past and the future meet in a single point of time. The mist, the tides, and the waves are all part of this dance, each one a movement in the eternal rhythm of the sea, a movement that carries the souls of the dead, the spirits of the living, and the whispers of the divine, all together in a journey toward the realms beyond the veil. And so, as the tides rise and fall, as the mist clings to the waters, and the waves carry their secrets upon the shore, the sea continues its eternal journey, crossing between the realms, between life and death, between the mortal and the divine. It is through the sea that we pass into the otherworld, where the ancient gods wait, where the spirits dwell, and where the mysteries of the cosmos are revealed in the soft ebb of the tides. Beyond the edge of mortal understanding, past the boundaries where time bends like the surface of a still lake, lies a land untouched by the ceaseless march of the sun and moon. This is the land beyond time, a place where the rhythms of the world, the turning of seasons, and the pulse of the earth are not bound to the same laws that govern the realm of the living. It is a land shrouded in mystery, a realm where time itself seems to lose its meaning, where the past, present, and future are woven together in a seamless, eternal tapestry. Here, beauty and sorrow exist side by side, the bright light of creation mingled with the shadow of loss. The land beyond time is not a place that can be reached by ordinary means. To journey there is to step beyond the veil of the known, and to cross the threshold that separates the mortal world from the realm of the gods, of spirits, of the eternal. It is said that only those who are touched by the divine, or those who seek the deepest truths of existence, can find their way to this sacred land. The heroes who have crossed the waves, who have ventured beyond the sea to the otherworld, have returned with stories of timeless landscapes, where the earth seems to breathe in a rhythm that is not of this world, where the mountains stand like silent sentinels, their peaks lost in a sky that is both eternal and infinite. The first of these heroes was a warrior whose name has been lost to time, a soul who stepped beyond the mortal world in search of the knowledge that lies hidden in the heart of the cosmos. With eyes set upon the horizon, this hero crossed the great ocean, stepping onto the shores of the land beyond time. The moment their feet touched the earth, they felt the world shift beneath them, the very air vibrating with a resonance that was both familiar and foreign. They had crossed the waves, and in doing so they had entered a world where time did not bend but flowed like the rivers of the deep, carrying with it the echoes of ancient truths. It is said that in the land beyond time, the land itself is alive, not just with the pulse of the earth, but with the pulse of all things that have ever been. The mountains, though still, seem to hum with the memory of all who have walked their slopes. The rivers, though clear, hold within their depths the stories of every soul who has crossed their waters. The trees, though rooted in place, sway as though moved by an unseen wind, their leaves rustling with the whispers of ages past. In this land, nothing is truly new, and yet nothing is ever the same. It is a place where the present moment is in constant flux, where beauty and sorrow, light and shadow, are intertwined in a dance that is both graceful and mournful. Time in the mortal world is measured by the rising and setting of the sun, by the changing of seasons, by the aging of the body. But in the land beyond time, time is not measured by the ticking of clocks or the movement of stars. Here, the passage of time is felt not in the way that one feels the passing of days or years, but in the way that one feels the breath of the earth, the quiet hum of existence itself. It is a rhythm that cannot be counted, a pulse that is both slow and fast, like the eternal ebb and flow of the tides. Those who step into this realm do not age in the way that mortals do, for time is not their master here. Instead, they are held in a state of eternal presence, a place where they are both within time and outside of it, where they can feel the weight of all that has come before and all that will come after, but are not bound by the ticking of the clock. This timelessness, though a gift, is not without its cost. For in the land beyond time, beauty and sorrow are inseparable, like the two sides of a coin that can never be separated. The beauty of the land is so pure, so breathtaking, that it fills the heart with a longing that cannot be satisfied. The landscapes are untouched by the ravages of time, their rolling hills and sparkling waters as fresh as the day they were born, their skies always blue, their sun always shining. But beneath this beauty lies a quiet sorrow, a sadness that seeps into the soul like a soft rain. It is the sorrow of knowing that nothing, not even this eternal land, can remain untouched by the passage of time. For in the land beyond time, even the most beautiful moments are tinged with the knowledge that they too will one day fade. The heroes who have crossed the waves, who have ventured into this timeless realm, have all returned with a deep sense of melancholy, a quiet longing that no earthly joy can fill. They speak of the beauty they have witnessed, of the land that stretches beyond the horizon, where the mountains meet the sky in a kiss that no mortal has ever seen. But they also speak of the sorrow that clings to this beauty, the knowledge that in this timeless place, Everything that is beautiful is also destined to fade, susceptible to be lost to the flow of time. They say that it is the beauty of impermanence that gives the land its sacred power, for it is in the knowledge that all things pass that the eternal becomes truly precious. The spirits of the land, those who dwell in the land beyond time, are not bound by the same laws that govern mortal existence. They are beings of light and shadow, of memory and dream, who move between the veils of the worlds with ease. These spirits are the guardians of the timeless landscapes, the keepers of the ancient wisdom that resides within the land. They are not gods in the traditional sense, but are instead the souls of the earth itself, the embodiment of its eternal pulse. To meet these spirits is to come face to face with the deep mystery of existence, to witness the quiet sorrow that lies at the heart of all things. They are beings of great beauty, yet their beauty is laced with the understanding that all things, even the most perfect, are impermanent. It is said that the spirits of the land beyond time speak to those who enter their realm, though their words are not always understood. They speak in riddles, in symbols, in the language of the earth itself, their voices like the sound of wind through the trees, like the murmur of water over stone. Their teachings are not of the world as we know it, but of the deeper truths that lie hidden beneath the surface. To listen to their words is to hear the song of the earth, to understand the language of the stars, to glimpse the wisdom of the ages. As the heroes of old crossed the waves and entered this sacred land, they did not return unchanged. The beauty of the land, the timelessness of its landscapes, have filled their hearts with a deep, unshakable longing. They returned with a knowledge that could not be shared, with a sorrow that could not be spoken. The land beyond time had opened its gates to them, had shown them the beauty of the eternal, but also the quiet sorrow that comes with knowing that all things, even the most beautiful, must eventually fade. And so, the land beyond time remains, a place where beauty and sorrow are one, where the timeless landscapes stretch out beyond the horizon, and where the spirits of the earth whisper their ancient truths. Those who journey there are forever changed, for they have glimpsed the eternal and have returned to the world with a heart full of longing and a soul marked by the quiet sorrow that lies at the heart of all things. Beyond the quiet shores, where the land fades into the embrace of the ever-shifting waters, there exists a force older than the first whisper of the winds, a being whose power holds sway over the mist and the tides, whose command is law upon the oceans and seas. He is the Lord of the Sea, Manannán mac Lir, the great guardian of the sacred crossings that lead to the Otherworld. His realm stretches far beyond the horizon, where the ocean meets the sky, and where the veil between mortal life and divine spirit grows thin, like the soft breath of a dream. It is he who watches over the crossings, guiding those who seek passage from one world to the next, from the realm of the living to the lands where the gods walk and the spirits rest. Manannán mac Lir is a god of the deep and the vast, a keeper of secrets, both those of the living and the dead. His form is said to be both vast and ethereal, his presence both commanding and subtle. He moves between worlds as the tide moves between land and sea, ever shifting, ever in motion, but always bound to the waters. His hair is said to be woven from the sea foam itself, his eyes the colour of the stormy depths, his voice the murmur of the waves upon a moonlit shore. He is the spirit of the sea, the soul of the ocean, and in his care rests the passage of all souls, the journey of the living who seek wisdom, and the passage of the dead who seek rest. The mist is his cloak, and the tides his breath. It is said that when the winds of fate blow across the seas, it is Manannán mac Lir who stirs the waters, whose waves carry the weight of destinies. The mist that rises from the ocean is his, and through it, the passage to the other world is made. The mist is no ordinary fog, it is a veil that hides both the dangers and the wonders of the sea, a shroud that separates the known from the unknown, the mortal from the divine. Those who would seek passage must first enter this mist, for it is the threshold that guards the sacred boundaries of life and death, of time and eternity. The mist can be as gentle as a whisper, or as fierce as a storm. It can lead the way, or it can obscure the path completely. But it is never to be trusted lightly, for it is under the command of the Lord of the Sea. Through this mist enchanted ships sail, vessels unlike any of the world's ordinary ships. They are made not of wood, but of light and shadow, of the very essence of the sea itself. Manna Norn Mac Lir commands these ships. His enchanted vessels that glide upon the waters, their sails catching the winds that carry souls across the boundaries between realms. These ships are not bound by the same rules of the earth. They sail through the mist, through the fog, carrying with them those who would seek the sacred shores of the Otherworld. Each ship has its purpose, and each vessel is as unique as the soul it carries. The ships are born of the sea, crafted by the hands of the gods, and they are blessed with powers that allow them to navigate the seas that lie beyond time. The ships are not merely modes of transportation, but sacred vessels, imbued with the essence of the waters they travel upon. They are a bridge between the realms, a connection between the mortal world and the divine. It is said that only those who have been chosen by Manna Nan Mac Lir may sail upon these ships, for they are bound to the ocean, to the mist, to the ebb and flow of life and death. There are tales of great heroes who have sailed upon these enchanted ships, crossing the vast expanse of the sea to seek wisdom, to meet the gods, or to journey to the lands beyond the veil. These heroes are said to have crossed the great waters with Manna Norn Mac Lir at their helm, guided by his steady hand and his unblinking gaze. In their journey they passed through the mists following the tides that carried them toward their destiny. And in these journeys they found the wisdom of the ages, the secrets of the gods, and the knowledge that only the seaborn can possess. But it is not only the living who are carried by these enchanted ships. The seas are also the path of souls, the gateway to the lands where the dead rest and the spirits of the past linger. When the time comes for a soul to cross over, to leave the world of the living behind, it is Manna Norn Mac Lir who watches over their journey. The mist rises around them, the tides shift, and the ship waits at the shore to carry them across the waters. The journey of the dead is as sacred as the journey of the living, and it is the Lord of the Sea who guides them to their final resting place. The ships that carry the dead are said to be made of the finest materials, of bone, of crystal, of the purest waters. They're crafted by Manna Nan Mac Lir himself, who ensures that the soul travels in peace. The ship is a reflection of the soul, shaped by the deeds and the spirit of the one who travels within it. For some, the journey is swift, carried by gentle tides and soft winds. For others, the journey is long, and the sea is filled with trials and challenges. But regardless of the path, it is the sea that carries the soul onward, through the mist and the tides, until they reach the shores of the Otherworld. It is said that there are omens that come with the sea, signs of fate and destiny, whispers of the divine that rise from the depths of the ocean. These omens are as old as the sea itself, as ancient as the first waves that broke upon the shore. Manna Norn Mac Lir is the guardian of these omens, for it is through the sea that the gods speak to the mortal world. The tide is never still. It moves, it shifts, it carries with it the voices of the divine. Those who are attuned to the ocean's rhythm can hear its whispers, can read the signs that it offers. It is said that great heroes, those who have crossed the waves in search of wisdom, have returned with these omens, symbols of the future, hints of the fate that lies ahead. The seaborne omens are not always clear, and they are not always understood. They are like the tide itself, sometimes rising gently, sometimes crashing with great force. They are signs of the future, but they are not always easy to interpret. Some believe that the omens are gifts from the gods, that they are meant to guide the chosen ones along their path. Others believe that the omens are warnings, reminders of the fragile balance between life and death, between the mortal world and the divine. Whatever their nature, the omens are a reminder that the sea holds the secrets of the universe, that it is both a passage and a barrier, as a gatekeeper between the realms. The Lord of the Sea, Manannán mac Lir, is not merely a god of the waters, but the guardian of the great ocean that separates the worlds. It is through his command that the mist rises, that the tides shift, and that the ships sail across the waves to carry the souls of the dead and the living alike. His power is great, for he holds dominion over the sea and all that lies within it, the creatures, the currents, the tides, and the omens that rise from the depths. Through his watchful gaze, the gateways between the worlds remain open, and the journey between life and death, between the mortal and the divine, continues in the eternal dance of the sea. As the tide rises and falls, as the mist shrouds the waters, the Lord of the Sea continues his endless watch, guarding the sacred crossings, guiding the souls, and ensuring that the passage between worlds remains undisturbed. For Manannán mac Lir is not only a god of the sea, but the keeper of the gateway, the threshold through which all must pass in their journey to the realms beyond. High above the restless tides and the timeless earth, beyond the mists where mortal feet can never tread, lies the realm of the gods, the sacred homeland of those whose power shapes the very stars themselves, where the heavens stretch endlessly and the light of creation burns eternal. This is the sky world, the divine dominion that hangs between the clouds and the stars, where the forces of the cosmos are spun and the threads of fate are woven by the hands of the gods. It is a place untouched by the wear of time, where the air is pure and the light is ever golden, a place where the divine gaze watches over the mortal realm, unseen but ever present. It is said that the sky world, like the earth and the sea, was born from the deep chaos that once wrapped the universe in its boundless silence. But where the earth rose from the ocean's depths and the seas roiled into being, the sky world came into being when the breath of the gods first stirred the fabric of the cosmos. It is a realm older than the first winds that swept across the earth, a place where time itself has no true measure. The stars above, those shining orbs that dance in the night, are not mere celestial bodies. They are the sacred treasures of the sky world, each one a divine being, each one a keeper of ancient wisdom, and each one a witness to the eternal cycles of the cosmos. The gods who dwell in the sky world are not like the mortals of the earth, bound by flesh and bone. They are beings of light and energy, their forms shifting like the very winds that swirl between the heavens. Their eyes reflect the depth of the cosmos, and their voices carry the weight of the stars, and their hearts beat with the pulse of the universe. These gods are the weavers of fate, the creators of destinies, and the guardians of the forces that shape the world below. They are the divine architects of the sky, and their presence can be felt in every storm that breaks across the land, in every star that flickers in the night, and in every breath that the winds carry to the earth. At the heart of the sky world lies the great cauldron of destiny, a sacred treasure that holds the fate of all things, both mortal and divine. This cauldron, forged from the essence of the first light, holds the threads of life that are woven into the tapestry of existence. The gods who sit in the sky world do not simply watch over the world below. They shape the destinies of all beings, as guiding them with the power that flows from the cauldron. It is said that the cauldron is the birthplace of fate itself, that within its depths, the threads of all that will ever be are spun and drawn together. The gods dip their hands into its waters, drawing the threads that will lead the mortals and immortals alike toward their destinies, toward the paths that will shape their lives. And yet, For all the power of the cauldron, it is not a realm without sorrow. For within the sky world, where time is unbroken and eternity stretches in all directions, there is the awareness that all things, even the gods, must one day fade. The gods see the fates of mortals, they witness the rise and fall of kingdoms, the blooming of life and the withering of death. They know the cycles of the earth, the ebb and flow of time, and yet they remain helpless in the face of their own destinies. The sky world is not a realm of absolute control. It is a place where the gods see the threads of fate laid out before them, but cannot escape the inevitability of change. As the gods gaze down upon the mortal realm, they see the lives of men and women unfold below them. They see the kingdoms rise and fall, the seasons pass in their eternal dance, and the lives of mortals play out like the shifting sands of time. They do not intervene directly, for the land of the living is a realm of free will, a place where mortals must choose their own paths. But the gods observe, and their gazes are heavy with the weight of knowing. It is said that the gods never truly sleep, for their awareness of the world below is constant, and every choice made by a mortal echoes through the heavens. It is through this divine gaze that the gods ensure that the balance between the realms is maintained, that the forces of fate and free will remain in harmony. The stars themselves are a reflection of the gods' divine nature, their movements governed by the celestial laws that bind the heavens together. Each star, though a distant fire in the night sky, is a presence, a living being who watches over the world below. Some stars are said to be the spirits of those long gone, their souls transformed into eternal light. Others are believed to be the gods themselves, their forms shining bright across the heavens as they guide the fate of mortals. The stars are not mere lights in the sky, but the eyes of the gods. The beacons of divine will that shine through the darkness of the night. It is through the movements of the stars that the gods communicate with the mortals, sending omens and signs. Their celestial patterns are mapped for those who seek to understand the will of the divine. It is said that the rise of certain stars signals the beginning of great events, the coming of heroes, or the turning of the tide in the mortal world. The stars are the silent watchers, their presence felt in every moment, their patterns etched into the fabric of fate. To look upon the stars is to look into the very heart of the sky world, to witness the divine influence that shapes the world of the living. In the sky world, the gods do not live in isolation. They are connected to the earth, to the sea, and to the very forces that govern the mortal realm. Though they exist beyond the veil of time, they are not beyond the reach of the land's sorrow or joy. They see the hearts of mortals, they witness their struggles, and they know the quiet pain of living in a world where time passes like a swift river, never stopping, never turning back. But in the sky world, there is peace, an eternal stillness that exists outside the flow of mortal time. The gods, though they are bound to the cycles of fate, are not slaves to time. They're free to move between moments, to gaze upon the world as it turns, and to see the web of existence from a vantage that no mortal could ever know. The sky world is a realm of infinite beauty, a place where the heavens are alive with light and the stars are the beacons of divine will. It is a realm where the gods can commune with the forces of the cosmos, where they can weave the threads of fate and see the future unfold before their eyes. Yet, despite its beauty and power, there is a quiet sorrow that lingers in the hearts of the gods. They know that all things, even the heavens, are subject to the laws of the cosmos. The beauty of the sky world is not a permanent beauty, but one that will one day fade, as all things must fade. The gods, though divine, are bound to the cycles of the universe. They are the creators of the sky, but they are also its servants, its guardians. And in this eternal dance between creation and destruction, they watch, knowing that their time too shall come. As the gods look down upon the mortal realm, They see the world turning in its endless cycle, the kingdoms rising and falling, the seasons turning from spring to winter, from life to death. They see the light of the stars reflected in the hearts of mortals, and they know that the path of the gods and the path of the mortals are forever intertwined. The heavens above, the stars that burn in the sky, the winds that carry the whispers of fate, all of these are part of a greater story, a story that has no end and no beginning, but moves in a circle, forever turning, forever shifting. And so, the sky world continues to watch over the land and the sea, the gods ever present, their eyes shining like the stars, their hearts filled with the knowledge of the eternal. The beauty of the heavens and the sorrow that resides within it remain as constant as the stars themselves, a reminder that time, though it may pass, is never truly gone, and that the divine is always with us, watching, guiding, and waiting. In the distant depth of time, before the land was shaped and the sky was filled with stars, before the first gods rose to their thrones and the great forces of creation began their eternal dance, there came the keepers, the guardians of the cosmic balance. These beings, ancient beyond measure and timeless in their nature, were not born of the earth, nor of the sea, nor of the sky. They were woven from the very fabric of the universe, from the threads that bind the realms together, from the silent force that governs the turning of all things. Their arrival was not heralded by the crashing of waves or the roaring of storms. It was as quiet and inevitable as the first breath of creation itself. They came to keep watch over the delicate equilibrium between the land, the sea, and the sky, to guard the boundaries between life and death, between the mortal and the divine. It is said that the keepers, whose names are known only to the eldest of bards and whispered in reverent tones by the sacred druids, were born from the heart of the chaos that once enveloped the cosmos. Their essence is neither light nor dark, neither good nor evil, but a harmonious blend of all that exists, a force that transcends the simple divisions of the world. They are the silent watchers, the unseen hands that guide the flow of existence, ensuring that no realm rises above another, that the balance of the three worlds is always maintained. They do not interfere in the affairs of the gods or the mortals, for their purpose is not to shape the world, but to protect it, to keep the threads of fate from unravelling, to prevent the forces of chaos from overwhelming the order of the universe. Their magic is a subtle power, one that flows not in grand gestures or dramatic displays, but in quiet whispers, in the silent movements of the earth beneath the feet, in the gentle shift of the tides, in the ever-turning cycles of life and death. The keepers do not wield their magic as a weapon, but as a shield, a force that maintains the harmony of the cosmos. Their power is not the power of creation, but of preservation, the power to ensure that the three worlds remain in their rightful place, that the land does not swallow the sea, nor the sky consume the earth. They are the guardians of the sacred spaces where the realms meet, the protectors of the portals that link the mortal world to the divine. At the heart of their magic lie their sacred artifacts, relics imbued with the essence of the cosmos, each one a symbol of their role as stewards of the worlds. These artifacts are not mere tools, but extensions of their very being, vessels of the ancient power that sustains the balance between the realms. The first of these artifacts is the crystal orb of the three realms, a gleaming sphere that holds the essence of the land, the sea, and the sky. It is said that within this orb, the entire universe is contained, every mountain, every river, every storm and star, each one a piece of the cosmic puzzle that the keepers protect. The orb is not meant to be seen by mortal eyes, for its light is too pure, too powerful, to be comprehended by those who walk the earth. But the keepers gaze upon it, and in its depths they see the flow of the realms, the delicate balance that must be preserved. with the orb. They can sense when the realms begin to shift, when the tides grow restless, when the winds blow too harshly. It is through the orb that they maintain the harmony of the worlds, ensuring that no one realm dominates the others, that the cosmic balance remains unbroken. The second of the Keeper's sacred artifacts is the Sceptre of Eternal Light, a staff that is said to have been forged from the first flame that ever burned upon the earth. This staff is a symbol of the Keeper's authority, a sign of their role as the protectors of the divine order. The sceptre does not hold power in the way that weapons or magic might. It is not a tool for conquest or destruction. Rather, it is a beacon of clarity, a symbol of the light that illuminates the path of balance. When the sceptre is raised, it sends a pulse of energy through the three realms, realigning the forces of nature, calming the storms, quieting the waves, and returning the earth to its rightful rhythm. The sceptre is both a reminder and a guide, showing the way to those who would stray from the path of harmony, calling them back to the centre, to the stillness of cosmic equilibrium. The third artifact is the Cloak of Eternal Silence, a garment woven from the threads of night itself, stitched together with the power of stillness and quiet. This cloak does not shield the Keeper from the world's gaze, but instead, it shields the world from imbalance. When draped over the shoulders of the Keeper, the cloak softens the edges of time and space, making the wearer invisible to the forces that would disrupt the balance. It is a cloak of protection, not for the Keeper, but for the realms they guard. Through its power, the Keeper is able to walk unseen between the worlds, to mend the tears in the fabric of existence, and to restore the harmony that is threatened by chaos. The cloak is a symbol of the Keeper's quiet presence. Though they are ever watchful, they do not act in haste, and their power is used sparingly, only when the delicate balance of the worlds is at risk. The Keeper's stewardship of the three worlds is a task not for the faint of heart, nor for those who would seek power for themselves. They do not seek glory or adulation. Their reward lies not in mortal praise, but in the preservation of the cosmic order. They stand apart from the gods and the mortals, watching over the realms with the patience of eternity. It is said that the Keepers do not age, for they are beyond the passage of time. They are not bound by the same rules that govern the creatures of the earth. They are in a sense eternal, existing outside the flow of mortal life. They have no home but the realms themselves, and no purpose but to maintain the sacred balance. And yet, despite their detachment, the Keepers are deeply connected to the three worlds they guard. They are the silent witnesses to the rise and fall of kingdoms, to the birth and death of mortals, to the ebb and flow of the tides. They see the lives of the gods unfold, and they know the hearts of the creatures who roam the earth. Though they do not intervene in the affairs of the realms, they feel the weight of their charge, the responsibility of ensuring that the balance is kept. Their magic is not the magic of creation or destruction. It is the magic of preservation, of subtlety, of harmony. They are the silent force that guides the movements of the universe, the quiet pulse that keeps the realms from falling into chaos. The Keepers are not alone in their task, for there are many who walk the realms, who help maintain the balance in ways that are not always visible. The druids, the shamans, the seers, all those who are in tune with the rhythms of nature are said to be guided by the Keeper's influence, though they may not always know it. The Keepers are the silent force behind the rituals, the unseen hand that shapes the destinies of mortals and immortals alike. They are the guardians of the sacred spaces, the protectors of the portals that link the realms, and the stewards of the cosmic order. And so the Keepers stand watch over the three worlds, their presence felt in the quiet spaces between the stars, in the stillness of the earth, in the pull of the tides. Their task is one of quiet reverence, for they are the ones who ensure that the balance is maintained, that the forces of the universe remain in their rightful place. Their magic is not of great spectacle, but of subtle influence, a power that shapes the course of existence without ever being seen. And in this silence, in this stillness, the keepers remain, eternal and unseen, the guardians of the cosmic balance. In the endless stretches of time, when the realms of the earth, sea and sky were still young, there came a moment of great upheaval, a time when the balance of the world was threatened not by the forces of nature, nor by the hearts of mortals, but by the gods themselves. The great divine wars that followed were battles not just between gods, but between the very essences of creation itself, the earth, the sky, and the sea, each one determined to shape the world in its own image, each one willing to tear the fabric of existence asunder to claim dominion over the realms. It is said that the first rumblings of war were felt long before the clash of weapons, long before the cry of battle filled the heavens. There was a subtle stirring among the divine, a quiet discontent that whispered through the mists of the land, through the waves of the sea and across the winds of the sky. The balance that had been so carefully crafted in the beginning, the unity of the three realms, was beginning to fray at the edges. Old alliances were tested, and new ambitions rose like shadows across the face of the world. The gods of the land, led by Eriu, the goddess who had first shaped the earth with her breath, were the first to stir. They had watched over the world's foundations, guiding the growth of forests, the rise of mountains, and the flow of rivers. But as the centuries passed, the land grew restless. The trees that had once stood in harmony began to sway in the winds of change. The rivers, which had once flowed with purpose, began to twist and turn in ways they had never done before. The earth itself, which had been shaped by divine hands, began to groan with the weight of its own existence. It was as if the land, once so firm and steady, had begun to question its place in the world, and so, Eriu and her kin, the gods of the earth, called upon the forces of the sky, who had long watched over them from above. Lu, the god of the sky, whose winds had once swept across the land, whose storms had given birth to life, felt the weight of Eriu's call. The sky too was growing restless. The winds that had once been gentle whispers now howled with a fury unknown before. The clouds gathered with purpose, darkening the once clear heavens. The storms that had once nurtured the earth now raged against it, as if seeking to tear apart the very foundation of the world. The sky, which had once embraced the earth, now stood apart, as though questioning whether it should claim dominion over the land. But it was the sea, the deep and ancient realm of Manon Norn Mac Lir, that would prove to be the most restless of all. The sea, which had always moved in its eternal rhythm, which had carried the dead to their final resting place, and the living to their unknown destinies, now rose up in defiance. The oceans, once calm and steady, now churned with a dark power. The waves grew tall, rising to meet the sky, crashing against the shore with a violence that had never been seen before. It was as though the sea, which had long been the silent guardian between the realms, had become a force of destruction, a power that sought to engulf all in its path. And so it was that the gods of the land, the sky and the sea found themselves on the cusp of war. War not of weapons, but of elemental forces, each one seeking to claim control over the others. The air crackled with tension, the earth trembled beneath the weight of the god's will, and the sea, ever restless, rose up like a great beast awakening from slumber. The first battle took place upon the earth itself, in the valleys where the rivers met the sea. Eriu and Lu stood together, their forces poised to strike, while Manon Norn Mac Lir commanded the great tides. The land, the sky, and the sea collided in a cataclysmic clash that shook the heavens and cracked the earth. The winds howled, the rivers flooded, and the mountains quaked as the divine forces locked in combat. The battle was fierce and relentless, with each god fighting not for glory, but for the future of the world itself. The sea, guided by Manna Norn Maclear's will, surged forward, its waves swallowing entire armies, drowning the forces of the earth and sky. The oceans rose in great tidal waves, crashing over the land, washing away the gods' creations with their unstoppable might. The sky too fought back with ferocity, the storms that Lu unleashed tearing through the heavens, sending bolts of lightning crashing into the earth below. The wind howled like a great beast, while the clouds gathered in great darkness, obscuring the light of the sun. The earth, though strong and unyielding, was torn asunder by the fury of the battle, its mountains crumbling, its rivers overflowing, and its sacred groves scattered by the force of the divine conflict. The battle raged for what felt like an eternity, a cosmic struggle that consumed the very essence of the world. It was not a battle fought with weapons, but with the raw forces of creation, land against sea, sky against earth, each seeking to shape the world in its own image. The gods, though powerful, were not invincible. They fought not only for their own dominion, but for the future of the world itself. For if the balance between the realms were lost, if the land, the sea, and the sky were torn asunder, then the very fabric of existence would unravel, and all that had been created would fall into ruin. At the height of the conflict, when the earth itself seemed on the verge of collapse, a great silence fell over the battlefield. The storm clouds parted, the winds stilled, and the waves receded. The gods, their strength waning from the long and brutal struggle, stood amidst the wreckage of the world, their forms battered and broken. It was then that they realized the cost of their conflict. The very essence of the world had been torn apart by their battle, and the balance between the realms had been shattered. The seas had swallowed entire lands, the mountains had crumbled into dust, and the sky, once bright and clear, was now filled with clouds of sorrow and regret. In that moment of silence, the gods understood the cost of their war. They saw the land that had once been lush and fertile now scarred and broken. The seas that had once been the lifeblood of the world now blackened with the debris of battle, and the sky that had once been a source of inspiration and hope now filled with darkness and grief. The beauty of the world had been marred by the violence of divine conflict, and the gods realized that they had been willing to sacrifice all that had been created in the name of power and control. And so the gods made a pact, one born not of victory, but of regret. They would never again wage war upon each other, for they had seen the destruction that their conflict had caused. They would now govern the realms in harmony, each taking its place in the cosmic balance, ensuring that the land, the sea, and the sky would never again be torn asunder. They would watch over the world, not with the fury of battle, but with the wisdom of understanding. The great divine wars had reshaped the world, but it was through the cost of their conflict that the gods learned the true meaning of stewardship, that to rule the realms was not to dominate them, but to preserve their delicate harmony. Thus, the gods withdrew to their respective realms, the earth, the sea, and the sky, each one standing as a guardian of the cosmic order. And though the scars of the great divine wars would remain upon the world, the gods vowed that they would never again allow their conflict to threaten the balance of creation. The great divine wars had reshaped the land, the sea, and the sky, but it was through their sorrow and their understanding that the worlds would one day heal, and the forces of creation would find their place once more. As the echoes of the great divine wars faded into the mists of time, and the last tremors of celestial conflict stilled within the very bones of the earth, a deep silence fell upon the world. It was not a silence born of death, but of quiet departure, a retreat into the shadows of memory. The gods, those mighty beings who had once shaped the land, the sky, and the sea, withdrew from the world of mortals, leaving behind only the faintest traces of their divine presence. Their footsteps, once heavy upon the earth, now faded into the distant past, leaving only the stories of their deeds and the silent guardianship of the realms they had once ruled. In the wake of their retreat, the gods of the sea, the sky, and the land returned to their sacred realms. Mana Norn Mak Lear, the lord of the sea, whose waves had once crashed with the fury of battle, now retreated into the depths, his presence a quiet murmur beneath the waters. He no longer walked the shores with the same force, for the tides had settled into a rhythm that no longer required his constant vigilance. The great mist that had once swirled around him, guiding the souls of the departed and the living alike, faded to a soft whisper. His command over the tides remained, but his gaze turned inward as he sought refuge in the heart of the ocean, where the rhythm of the waves held him in a deep and contemplative silence. In the sky world, Lu, the god of the heavens, withdrew from his place of constant vigilance. His winds, once fierce and unyielding, softened, becoming the gentle breezes that whispered through the trees in the open fields. The storms that had once roiled in his wake became rare, their intensity now reduced to the occasional thunderclap that echoed in the distant heavens. The stars that had once burned brightly beneath his watch now faded into a soft glow, their patterns no longer shifting with the same urgency. The celestial forces that had once been in constant motion now settled into a steady rhythm, and the divine presence of Lu became a distant memory, felt only in the quiet movement of the wind and the calmer passage of the stars. On the earth itself, Yu and the gods of the land retreated into the hidden mounds and groves that had once been their sacred places. These mounds, where the ancient energies of the earth flowed with quiet power, became the refuge of the gods. Their footsteps now but a faint echo beneath the roots of ancient oaks and the stones that mark the sacred boundaries. The earth, once shaped by the gods, now grew wild again, its forests deepening, its rivers winding with a life of their own. The sacred groves that had once been the seat of divine presence became places of quiet reverence, where only the most faithful of mortals could feel the lingering touch of the gods, though the gods themselves were no longer seen. The land, once under the careful stewardship of divine hands, was now left to the mortals, who inherited the task of tending to the earth, of growing the crops, of building the homes, and of living with the quiet legacy of the gods. It was during this time, this slow and solemn withdrawal of the divine from the mortal world, that the first age began to fade into memory. The gods, though never truly gone, became distant figures in the hearts of mortals, their presence reduced to the sacred places they had left behind. The land, the sea, and the sky, though still under the guardianship of divine forces, no longer carried the same immediate weight of their creators. The gods no longer walked among the people, no longer shaped the world with their hands, no longer guided the seasons with their breath. The divine had retreated into the realms beyond time, into the spaces between the worlds, leaving the mortals to carry on their legacies in silence. And yet, it was in this silence that the true inheritance of humankind began. The mortals, who had once looked to the gods for guidance, now found themselves standing alone upon the earth. No longer would they wait for the heavens to speak, nor for the sea to stir with divine purpose. The gods had placed the world into their hands, and it was now up to them to shape the future, to carry forth the sacred wisdom that had been passed down through the ages, to tend to the land and its creatures, to honour the cycles of the earth, and to remember the divine guardianship that had once been. The gods had entrusted their power to humanity, and the task of preserving the balance between the realms now lay upon mortal shoulders. The passing of the old age was marked not by a single event, but by a gradual fading, a softening of the divine presence, a turning of the heavens toward their eternal sleep. The footsteps of the gods, once felt in every corner of the earth, now grew faint. The temples that had once held their sacred flames grew cold. The altars that had once been adorned with offerings became overgrown with moss and ivy. The sacred groves that had been the meeting places of gods and mortals were now quiet, their trees standing like silent sentinels, guarding the memories of a time long past. The land, though still fertile and alive, carried with it the weight of the gods' absence. The winds no longer carried the same songs, and the rivers no longer spoke with the same urgency. The divine had withdrawn, leaving behind only the quiet echoes of their presence. In the silence that followed the gods' retreat, humankind learned to walk the earth in a new way. No longer would they look to the sky for guidance, nor to the sea for answers. The divine was no longer a constant presence in their lives, but a distant memory, a story passed down through generations. The mortals who had once revered the gods now turned inward, finding wisdom not in the heavens, but in the earth beneath their feet, in the rhythms of the seasons, in the quiet of the forests and the deep of the caves. The land became their teacher, the sky their companion, and the sea their reflection. And through this new understanding they learned to live in harmony with the world, to honour the cycles of birth and death, of growth and decay, and to carry the legacy of the gods within their hearts. Yet even in this new age the shadows of the old world lingered. The divine had withdrawn, but their presence remained like the fading light of a distant star, a soft glow in the corners of the world. The sacred places, though abandoned by the gods, still held their power. The mountains, though no longer the seat of the gods, still stood as silent guardians of the earth. The seas, though no longer roiling with divine conflict, still carried with them the ancient currents of fate. And the land, though no longer shaped by the hands of the gods, still bore the mark of their creation. In this way, the withdrawal of the gods was not an end, but a transformation. The old age had passed, but in its place a new age began, a time when the divine, though distant, was no less present in the hearts of those who remembered. The silence that replaced the gods' footsteps was not an absence, but a space in which humanity could grow, learn, and shape its own destiny. The gods had left their mark upon the world, but it was now up to humankind to honour that mark, to carry forward the wisdom of the past, and to walk the earth as stewards of the land, the sea, and the sky. The divine had withdrawn, but their legacy remained, etched into the fabric of the world, a quiet presence that would never fade. Though the gods have long since withdrawn from the mortal world, leaving behind only the silent shadows of their once mighty presence, the echoes of the three worlds, the land, the sea, and the sky, still linger, faint but unmistakable, across the face of the earth. These echoes are not mere remnants of a time gone by, but living whispers, carried upon the winds, flowing through the rivers, and sinking deep into the soil. The spirits of the ancient world, though unseen, continue to walk beside the living, their footsteps hidden in the mist, their voices faint in the rustling of the trees and the murmurs of the earth. The land, the sea, and the sky hold memories older than the stars, and even now those memories can be felt in the sacred sites, the forgotten paths, and the timeless beauty of the world that remains. In the quiet and forgotten corners of the world, where the earth has not been touched by the hands of man for countless generations, the spirits of the past still make their home. These are the places where the veil between the worlds grows thin, where the lingering echoes of the gods can still be heard, where the spirits of those who have passed remain, neither fully departed nor fully present, but existing in a state of eternal waiting. These spirits, some old and wise, others young and eager, move between the realms, their presence felt but never seen. They walk in the ancient forests, across the hills and the valleys, along the shores where the sea meets the land, their forms as insubstantial as the mists that rise from the waters at dawn. It is said that the spirits are drawn to the places where the boundaries between the worlds are weak, where the ancient power of the gods still flows beneath the surface of the earth. These sacred sites, though often forgotten by mortal eyes, remain places of great significance. They are the heartbeats of the world, the sacred spaces where the energy of creation is concentrated, where the divine forces of the land, the sea, and the sky converge. These places are not always obvious, nor are they always marked by stone or sign. They may be hidden deep within a forest, where the trees grow so thick that sunlight barely touches the ground. They may be found at the foot of a mountain, where the wind howls through the crags and the air is thick with the scent of ancient stone. They may lie beneath the surface of the sea, where the waves crash against rocks and the water carries the stories of forgotten ages. Even in the present age, and those who walk in these sacred places often feel the weight of the past pressing upon them. There's a sense of quiet reverence in the air, as if the land itself remembers the footsteps of the gods, the echo of their voices and the warmth of their presence. The wind that whispers through the trees carries with it the ancient songs of the world, songs that are known only to those who listen closely, who understand the language of the earth. The stones that mark these sacred sites, though weathered and worn by the passage of time, still carry the imprint of the god's touch. They are the silent witnesses to the great events that have unfolded upon the earth, and they stand as a reminder that the world, though changed, is never truly separated from the divine. The sacred sites, though often hidden or forgotten, are still powerful places. To those who know where to look, these sites reveal themselves, offering glimpses of the past, fragments of the divine, and echoes of the spirits that linger within the landscape. It is in these places that the ancient magic of the three worlds still resides, where the balance between land, sea, and sky remains in delicate harmony. The paths that lead to these sites are not always clear, and many who seek them out may find themselves lost, as if the land itself is testing their worthiness. For these are places that cannot be easily found by those who seek only to claim them, but only by those who approach with reverence, with humility, and with a heart open to the whispers of the past. Some speak of the forgotten paths, those old roads that wind through the hills and forests, over the mountains and across the rivers. These paths were once trodden by the gods themselves, by the heroes who walk between the realms, and by the spirits of the earth, the sea, and the sky. Though time has erased most of them, these paths still exist in the very bones of the land, carved into the earth by the footsteps of the divine. To walk these paths is to feel the presence of those who came before, to walk in the footsteps of gods and heroes, to follow the way of the ancient ones. It is said that these forgotten paths are not just trails through the landscape, but pathways of the spirit, ways that lead from the mortal realm to the divine. The journey along these paths is not just a physical one, but a spiritual one, a journey into the heart of the world, where the forces of creation and destruction meet. Along these paths, one may feel the weight of the past pressing down upon them, a sense that the land itself is alive, that it remembers all that has come before. The wind that blows through the trees, the sound of the river rushing over the stones, the rustling of the leaves beneath one's feet. These are the voices of the spirits, the whispers of the gods, speaking to those who walk the ancient way. These forgotten paths are not only places of memory, but places of transformation. For those who are brave enough to walk them, the journey may offer glimpses into the deeper truths of existence, into the mysteries of the land, the sea, and the sky. The paths are lined with signs and omens, subtle messages left by the gods, by the spirits of the earth, and by those who have walked before. These signs are not always easy to interpret, and often they are hidden in plain sight, like the rustling of a leaf or the ripple of water across a stone. But to those who are attuned to the land, who listen with the heart and the soul, These signs are clear, and they lead the way to the deeper understanding of the world. And so, even in this age, when the gods no longer walk openly upon the earth, their presence is felt in the very landscape, in the ancient trees that stand as silent sentinels, in the stones that mark sacred sites, and in the quiet paths that wind through the hills and valleys. The spirits of the land, the sea, and the sky still whisper their ancient songs, still watch over the world, and still guide those who seek to understand the deeper mysteries of existence. The divine is never truly gone. It lingers in the land, in the waters, in the winds, and in the hearts of those who listen to the whispers of the past. The echoes of the three worlds, land, sea, and sky, continue to reverberate through the ages, lingering like a soft murmur beneath the surface of life. The sacred sites, the forgotten paths, and the ancient memory embedded in the landscape are not just remnants of a time-long past, but living traces of the divine, waiting to be rediscovered by those who seek with open hearts. In the stillness of the earth, in the flow of the rivers, in the rustling of the trees, the gods still speak, and their presence continues to shape the world in ways both subtle and profound. In the deep stillness of the present, when the mortal world hums with the noise of daily life, and the gods have withdrawn into their distant realms, the ancient cycles continue their steady turn. The sacred rhythm that shaped the three worlds, the land, the sea, and the sky, remains unbroken, an eternal pulse that echoes through the heart of the universe. The realms are not merely separate spheres, but interconnected threads in a vast and intricate web, a web that weaves together the lives of mortals, gods, and spirits alike. The legacy of the land, sea, and sky endures, not in the form of grand celestial events or divine interventions, but in the quiet, unwavering passage of time, in the cycles of the seasons, in the whispers of the earth and the winds. The gods once walked the earth, the sea, and the sky, are shaping the realms with their hands, guiding the flow of existence with their will. But now the land is left to its own devices. The sea churns beneath the still gaze of Manan and Maclia, and the sky, once alive with the winds of Lu, holds its breath, waiting. The gods no longer walk among us, their footsteps fading from the mortal world, but the legacy of their presence remains woven into the very fabric of the universe. Their stories are etched in the hills, carved into the rivers, and carried on the winds. The Siths that once told of their greatness now endure in the quiet endurance of the world, in the rhythm of the tides, the rising of the sun, and the turning of the earth. And yet, though the gods may be hidden, their presence is never truly gone. For the Celtic cosmos is not a place of endings, but of eternal renewal. Time in the mortal realm, though measured by the rising and setting of the sun, is but a flicker in the great tapestry of existence. It is a circle, forever turning, forever renewing, as the cycles of the seasons turn and the tides ebb and flow. The gods who shape the world are not lost to it, but waiting for the moment when the three worlds will converge once more, when the veil between the mortal and the divine will grow thin again, and when the great prophecy passed down through the ages will come to pass. It is said that in the distant future the world will once again tremble beneath the footsteps of the gods, that the sacred balance between the land, the sea, and the sky will be tested once more. The signs of this great convergence have been woven into the fabric of the world since the first whispers of creation. They are the quiet omens that move through the land, the sea, and the sky. The ripple of water across a stone, the rustle of leaves in an ancient grove, the call of a bird at dusk. These are the prophecies that the mortal world has forgotten, but that the earth still remembers and the gods still wait for. The prophecies are not written in the stars or on stone tablets, but are carried in the rhythms of the world, in the pulse of the land, in the silence of the sea, and in the breath of the sky. They are the whispers of fate, the threads of destiny that bind the three worlds together, waiting for the moment when they will once again converge. In the quiet endurance of the myth, the world continues to move in its endless cycle, ever turning, ever renewing. The gods may be distant, but their power is woven into the very earth beneath our feet, into the winds that blow across the seas, and into the stars that light the sky. The land still holds the echoes of their footsteps, the sea still carries the memory of their presence, and the sky still holds the breath of their will. In the deep silence of the world, the ancient myth continues to live, quietly enduring, waiting for the moment when it will awaken once more. For the three worlds are never truly separate. They are linked by an eternal bond, a bond that stretches across time and space, across life and death. The land, the sea, and the sky are the great pillars that hold the world together, and though they may seem to exist apart, they are bound by the threads of fate that weave through the fabric of the cosmos. The gods may have withdrawn, but the power of their creation remains, waiting to be called upon once more. The three worlds are not static, nor are they fixed in place. They are in a constant state of flux, forever shifting, forever changing, yet always remaining the same. The cycles of the earth turn, the tides rise and fall, the winds blow, and the stars shine above, and all the while the myth endures, waiting for the moment when the realms will once again meet. In this waiting, there is a quiet beauty, a beauty that is not loud or brash, but subtle and profound. It is the beauty of the earth, untouched and unyielding, the beauty of the sea, deep and eternal, and the beauty of the sky, vast and ever-changing. These are the beauties that endure, the beauties that remain even in the silence of the gods' withdrawal. The world may seem still, but it is alive with the energy of creation, with the whispers of the divine. The gods not absent, but present in every corner of the world, in every tree, every river, every mountain, every star. Their legacy lives on in the land, the sea, and the sky, in the cycles of nature that continue to turn, in the quiet rhythms of life that move beneath the surface of the world. In this silence, there is also a sorrow that is not one of mourning, but of longing, a longing for the time when the gods will return, when the worlds will converge, and when the great prophecy of the divine convergence will come to pass. The people of the earth may have forgotten, but the land, the sea, and the sky remember. They wait for the moment when the veil between the realms will be lifted, when the gods will once again walk the earth. When the forces of the land, the sea, and the sky will come together to reshape the world. And in that moment the great cycle will begin again, the eternal dance of creation and destruction, of life and death, of light and dark, will continue as it has always done. The legacy of the three worlds, the land, the sea, and the sky, is a legacy of eternity. Though the gods may have withdrawn, though their footsteps may have faded from the mortal realm, their presence remains, woven into the fabric of the world. The myths they left behind continue to echo through the land, the sea, and the sky, carried on the winds, whispered in the rustling leaves, and sung by the rivers that flow through the earth. These myths are not stories of the past, but living truths, with truths that will continue to shape the world until the moment when the worlds converge once again, when the gods return to the mortal realm, and the great prophecy of the divine balance comes to fruition. And so, the cycle turns, ever onward, ever unbroken. The land, the sea, and the sky wait, their voices silent but ever present, their power eternal. The legacy of the gods remains, a quiet force that endures until the time comes when the three worlds will once again meet and the dance of creation will begin anew.